Because Deadpool and Wolverine was coming out, I decided to rewatch all of the Fox X-Men movies. And I gotta say that overall, I really enjoyed that whole experience and was surprised by how my opinion has kind of changed on some of those movies over the years. So much so that I thought it would be kind of fun to just kind of walk through all of that with you and just kind of do a ranking of all of the X-Men movies, all 14 of them from the original X-Men all the way up until Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm going to be spoiling each movie, but only within when we're talking about each movie. So don't worry, I'm not going to spoil Deadpool and Wolverine until the very end of the video. Obviously, we're going to start off at the beginning with the original X-Men that came out in the year 2000. This movie does a great job at really introducing the whole world of the X-Men. It's a pre-established kind of thing where like these people know each other, and I like that for most of the characters. You know, like Magneto and Professor X and Cyclops and Jean and Storm. They've got history, and I like that we don't just know everything right off the bat. And that goes extra for Wolverine. I mean, to be fair, he doesn't know what's going on either, but I do like that we don't just get all those answers even by the end of the movie. It's like, hey, you know, there's still some things we don't know, a lot of things we don't know, but we're gonna look into those things moving forward. Rogue is a great character to just kind of let us get introduced into the series. Now I understand if you're somebody who really likes Rogue, that, you know, this version of her, you know, might not be your favorite. There's some really cool stuff that happens in this first movie. I like almost everything from the big epic fight at the end at the Statue of Liberty, how the team works together. There's of course like the silly line where Storm, you know, talks to Toad.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
But outside of that, I think it's really kind of aged really well. All the characters pretty much get a moment or two to shine. And yeah, I think that this is one that definitely laid a good groundwork. I can understand why it was as popular as it was. And I honestly think that without this movie, we would not have the superhero movies that we have today, because, you know, it made it cool, made it fun. So taking all of that in mind, I'm going to put X-Men in the A tier. That then brings us into X2, X-Men United. This movie has a fantastic opening. The scene where Nightcrawler is jumping all over the place, just getting to use his you know, teleportation powers and everything is just really cool. At this point, they definitely knew that Wolverine was the breakout star, and so they really focus in on him. But not as much as I remembered it being. Like, it definitely is a big part of the story, but it just kind of feels like it just happens to be like where he's going. The guy who was his problem with Stryker, who ends up showing up a lot in all of these X-Men movies, a lot more than I remembered. Like, overall, like, I feel like he's the big bad of these X-Men movies. I think that a movie is lucky when it gets like one super iconic performance out of somebody where it's like, oh, this is who this actor will be known as for the rest of their career. But the X-Men movies have like 4 or 5 of those. Of course, we already mentioned Wolverine, but Professor X with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen playing Magneto also are just like perfectly cast. They're both just so fun to watch every time they're on screen. Every line that they're giving, you just feel it. These are not people who are phoning it in at all. And I think that a huge part of the success of the first 2 X-Men movies really just hang off of those 3 people. Now, this movie is going to rank really high for me. I'm actually going to put it up in the S tier, but it does start to reveal one of my big problems that kind of continues on for a few of the X-Men movies, and that's the Jean Grey and Wolverine romance. Like, they really are playing up like, oh man, they're like star-crossed lovers, but like she's married to Cyclops, or she's with Cyclops, and so she can't be with him, and he really loves her. But really, like, you break down like how much time these people spend together. Like, they've known each other for like 4 days. It's like 4 days. It feels, if I'm remembering right, like it's like, oh no, he hasn't been back since he left in the first one. And then most of the time that he's back in the second one, Jean and Storm are gone looking for Nightcrawler. And so it's just like, when are they falling in love with each other? I definitely understand there's attraction, right? They've definitely got some strong tension there, but it feels like she's really making it clear, like, hey, I'm not that into you. Like, this is fun, but like, I love Scott, and that's who I'm with. If it just kind of ended where it does in this one, that'd be fine. But how much it just gets blown out of proportion in The Last Stand, and then even into the Wolverine, I'm just like rolling my eyes every time they're like, oh, Jean, he just loved Jean so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, like he has like 3 other romantic relationships in this series that are better than that one. But really everything else in the movie just is firing on all cylinders, so it's not enough to drag me down that much because it's a pretty small part of the overall story. So like I said, that one's being in the S tier. X-Men: The Last Stand is a big step down and a pretty big disappointment for me. There's stuff in there that is fun. I think that in almost all of these movies, there's at least a couple of sequences where I'm like, oh, that was pretty awesome. Like in this one, the scene where Magneto lifts up the Golden Gate Bridge and like takes it to Alcatraz is just so cool. But there's a lot of things in this that just as a story don't work for me. They really lean into the Wolverine gene stuff, like I mentioned before. Storm having a big part is fine, but then she just gets like smacked around by this no-name mutant that's hanging out with Magneto for the entire movie. And it's just like, what in the world is going on? I thought you're supposed to be like super awesome, Storm. Like you're just like, the speedster is just knocking you out of the sky and everything. Like you're flying. You're supposed to have, some combat superiority up there, but you got nothing. It's fun seeing Kelsey Grammer as Beast, as limited as that role is. But then like it gets bounced out in the negative way by Vinnie Jones being the Juggernaut, which is, was a choice. And leaning into all the memes and stuff in the way that they did that character and everything was very, very odd. Also, not a fan of how they kill Professor X. I know that he comes back, which is another reason why I'm not a fan of how they kill him, because it's like there's no tension at all in what actually happened in this movie. In fact, the two big things, like overarching story-wise, that would have been like, oh, that's interesting, Professor X getting killed and Magneto losing his powers, both are like erased before the post-credit scene even. With Professor X showing up in that other guy's body and Magneto's powers starting to come back already. It might seem a little bit harsh and lower than some people would put it, but for me, this is a D tier. Not one I'm eager to revisit at all. X-Men Origins Wolverine is next, and I think this might be my most controversial pick, but I really think this one is actually not that bad. It's very much just middle of the road. The biggest sin of this movie is missed opportunity. They had it like right there. It was so close to like just being so awesome. The whole opening sequence where it's Wolverine and Sabretooth, going through all these different wars throughout history and being together, like really, that should have been the whole movie. That should have been it. Like you could have been really just developing their whole character and eventually, get to what happens in this movie, where it's like he's trying to, find out who's taking out all of his old war buddies and everything so that he can track down Sabretooth, who killed his wife now. But, get there later. And how much more would it hit if we had actually seen their characters become like, close to each other, but then like get torn apart over time as, Sabretooth gets more and more cutthroat and Wolverine just kind of grows more and more of a conscience with everything. It's got just enough like really goofy parts in it that people can just point out and be like, oh, that part when he uses his claws and they spark, like that's really dumb. Yes, it's really dumb. The CGI claws don't look great either. And then the way that they introduce Gambit into it as well, it just underwhelming. That's a big part of it. It's just underwhelming, missed opportunities, but there's, I don't know, enough in here where I'm just like, that's not bad. It's not bad. And it's fun too. That's a part of it that I enjoy, and it makes it rewatchable at least, where it's like, hey, at least I'm having a good time with this. Like in the rewatching, it's not boring. I like the Blob stuff in there, but I don't know. It's, kind of middle of the road. Though, of course, it is a little easier to swallow now that we have like 3 Deadpool movies that are actually good and like do the character justice, whereas when this came out, it was just like, that's not Deadpool. And like, that's all you had to go off of. So it's a little easier of a pill to swallow, I think. But yeah, that's definitely something where it's like back in the day, it was like, yeah, that's pretty much what nobody wanted when it came to how they did that character. It's a C tier. X-Men First Class was one that I really remembered liking a lot when I saw it the first couple times. And as I was rewatching it this time, I was worried actually, because the first half of it, I really wasn't feeling it. But once they finally got the team together, I was on board, especially when you get those scenes with, Erik and Charles playing off of each other. It's so crazy that, both versions of these characters, both the old versions with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen and the new versions with Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy, just are both so good. It's just crazy that they were able to cast both those so well. It probably says something about like the characters themselves, that they're very well defined and easy to understand. And so just lets these guys kind of put their own little spins on them. I think Kevin Bacon as Shaw is a pretty good villain. He's got easy to follow motivations. Like, this very easily could fall into like being like a James Bond plot. And it might even at times where it's like the bad guy is doing something bad. We have to stop the bad guy from doing the bad thing. And that's all you remember once the movie's over. I'm going to end up putting this one in the B tier, and I would almost put it up in A tier, but I really do have a problem with the whole way that they deal with the Darwin character. Like, if you establish somebody as like, hey, I can adapt to anything, and then you kill that person like right away, like in the next scene, it's like, well, why didn't you just choose a different character? Like, that's the thing, like as a writer, is like, just choose a different character. If you want to kill somebody, that's fine. Even make it a strong character so that you can still be like, oh yeah, it's established that Shaw is a big threat, but not have it be like, oh, actually, like, his powers aren't what we said they were. And then we have all the Jennifer Lawrence stuff in there too. I'm not sure if this is my favorite version of the character. I think I'd prefer the strong silent type that we get with Rebecca Romijn. But, you know, she's grown up and she'll get there eventually. It's fun seeing the X-Men get dropped into like real historical events, you know, with the Cuban Missile Crisis and everything. And so I think it's a cool backdrop and everything for the story, and overall it works. The Wolverine is up next, and this is actually where I kind of have the controversial thing I was mentioning earlier, and that's that I actually think that The Wolverine is worse than X-Men Origins Wolverine. There's barely any mutants in this movie, and it's just kind of Wolverine going off and fighting the Yakuza, which is cool, you know, and it's not, again, a bad thing. I'm putting this one in the C tier as well, but it just doesn't have as much of the kind of stuff I like in these movies. It also doesn't help for me that this movie focuses in on like the whole Jean Grey stuff again. It's like, yeah, all right, I get it. Jean, he liked her. He knew her a little bit, but like, can we just let it go, please? Of course, Hugh Jackman is great, like usual. And I don't really blame anybody else that's in the movie for not having like a particularly memorable performance. It's just that they aren't really given much to do. Though I do like that it's him just kind of like getting plopped into this like little family drama about like who's going to take over when the dad dies and everything. So that's kind of fun. It's like, oh yeah, this is the kind of story that I like reading in a comic where it's kind of self-contained and everything. So again, it's not awful, but you know, it's just still there in the C tier. I think the funnest thing about X-Men Days of Future Past is that you get to experience both versions of X-Men. You get the old guys, you get the young guys, and you get Wolverine. It's everything that everybody wants when they're coming into these movies. It's fun to see some of the character reversals where now Wolverine is like the older, more experienced guy who's happened to kind of coach Charles along and help him like realize his potential, where, you know, he's been doing that for Logan the entire time up to this point. Also, this has one of the best sequences in any superhero movies with, you know, Quicksilver running through the kitchen and everything. It's just so awesome. I was watching that scene with my kids even, and they're just like, whoa, that was really cool. And, you know, and the fact that this movie, which is at this point like 10 years old, still getting that reaction from people, you know, I think that means this one is a classic. It's a fun way to kind of go and reset the timeline too, that lets them be able to kind of be like, okay, things don't have to end up exactly like they did in the original series, because Wolverine did go back and change a bunch of stuff. And plus, on top of all that stuff, it's fun to see Iceman finally get to just be super cool at the beginning as well. And Bishop too. I know Bishop's not getting to do very much. So again, if you're a big Bishop guy, it's not going to be that great for you, but it's cool to see him at least. There's like a bazillion X-Men characters. Not everybody gets to show up. So to see your guy show up for just a little bit, you know, it's pretty nice. The fact that it balances out as well as it does and gives people the moments that they get, I think this one deserves to be up there in the A tier. When the original Deadpool came out, I was not a fan. But I think I kind of fell into everybody who likes Deadpool is very annoying stuff because of just some of the people who do are very, I don't know, vocal in how excited they are about the character. But then when you distance yourself from that and actually just watch the movie, you realize, oh, the movie thinks that this guy is annoying, and everybody in here does not like being around him and would like him to just go away. It makes you realize that some of the people who are really stoked on Deadpool might be missing the point a little bit. This movie has some very well choreographed fight scenes, and they're well shot too, in a way where, you know, you get to see all the action. And then also the performance by Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is just, again, a guy who is made to play this part. Personally, my favorite character in the Deadpool movies is Colossus. and he gets some pretty good scenes in here. So does his trainee that he's working with, the Negasonic Teenage Warhead. She's fun too. They play her character off in a way where it's like, okay, you know what she is. They get a couple lines over on her, but she's getting lines over on Deadpool as well, and so it's like nobody's really winning in that scenario. And so I think that's kind of like the perfect balance to play between those two. I've definitely come around on this movie a bit. It's going to be in the B tier for me. Now, X-Men Apocalypse is a bit of a bummer for me. I love Oscar Isaac, but you can barely tell it's him under all of this makeup. He's not giving a performance that really kind of sings, right? He is not like Deadpool. He is not like Wolverine or Magneto or Professor X, where it's like, oh, he was born to play this part. He just walks around and talks all like low and menacing at people and then does magic on them and then they become stronger. It's not that cool. Psylocke doesn't get a ton to do, though. I remember when the casting happened, people were like, Olivia Munn as Psylocke is perfect. But like, it's only perfect casting if like they get to do something. She jumps around and she's in the costume, which for some people is enough. For me, I'd like a little bit more. Mystique's playing a big part here. I think this might be my favorite out of all of her performances because I'm starting to be like, okay, I get where she's coming from. Cyclops is almost unbearable in the first half of this movie, though. I'm so glad that he softens up a bit. It's really hard because there's just so many characters and it doesn't do as good of a job as like some of those early ones as just like to give everybody their own moments and just let them shine. But it is harder too because there's just so many more people. I also don't like that they're just like, oh yeah, everybody is dead from like First Class. I know that they really kind of touch on this a little bit in Days of Future Past, but it's just like, oh yeah, you really liked Banshee? Yeah, he's dead. Oh, and then they kill off Havoc and that's when he's dead too. And it's like, I did like those characters. Why do you have to keep killing them? I also don't like that Beast can just like turn into like his human form and his beast form back and forth and everything. This one just has a lot of the same problems that I had with The Last Stand, where it's just like kind of too much going on. It doesn't feel very like directed in what it's doing either. So it's down there in that D tier. Luckily, we don't stay down in D tier for the next one. Logan is taking us all the way up to the very top. It's S tier. It's the best out of all the X-Men movies. Just because of what it manages to do emotionally with the characters. Now, obviously, Hugh Jackman is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this, being the main character and everything. But I think Patrick Stewart is like underpraised when it comes to his performance here. He is so sad and tired and just, I don't know, wants to do something good still and feels like there's still good to be done, but at the same time is just like unable to do barely anything. The fact that he's like a time bomb as well is just a really interesting way to kind of deal with that character, and seeing his interactions with Laura versus her interactions with Logan and how those kind of change as the movie goes on, just all really works. There's a lot of sad parts in this movie, though. It's sad when Professor X dies. It's sad when Caliban dies. It's sad when Logan dies or when the family dies. It's just sad. A bunch. It's sad when you find out about the mutant kids being grown in a lab. It's just kind of depressing. So even though we're like putting it up here at the top of the S tier, being like, yeah, this is probably the best acted, best written, best directed out of all these movies, it is not the one I want to watch the most. Not by a long shot. Just because I value my mental well-being. People have been singing the praises of this movie since it came out, so there's not really much I can add to that. So I'll just say, I agree. Very good. Now, Deadpool 2, I really, really enjoyed when it came out. It wasn't one where I had to warm up to it like I did the first one. In fact, I like it, even to this day, more than I like the first Deadpool. That might be controversial. I don't really care. I really like how much there are just a ton of characters in it. I love an established universe with these relationships we get to learn about from their interactions and everything. There's more Colossus in it, so obviously I'm going to like that. Cable is a fun kind of foil for Deadpool and like how opposite he is in his just demeanor, but then also like in how they're trying to stop each other is just, a fun cat and mouse. Domino's a lot of fun. And actually there's like that whole X-Force sequence is probably the funniest sequence in any superhero movie that I can think of, like right now off the top of my head. Like it's like from when they're casting everybody in X-Force until like the end of the sequence when everybody is dead is just fantastic. Deadpool 2 isn't as sad as the first Deadpool is. That's one thing I don't think I mentioned. Like the first one's really sad, like in how like he's sick and he's dying and he's doing all this stuff. In this one, his girlfriend gets killed, but then we really kind of move past that pretty quick. And like, it's like, oh yeah, it comes up every once in a while, but it's like, like it's all right. Like we're just still cracking jokes and everything. The whole final fight with Juggernaut is a lot of fun, and I like how the music plays into it as well. The soundtracks on all of the Deadpool movies are also like top tier. They don't get talked about as much as Guardians. To be fair, I don't think they're quite to that level as like the Guardians of the Galaxy ones, but they're up there. They're a lot of fun, a lot of variety, and it plays into like the scenes really well. Though I do like this one better than the original Deadpool, it's not going to make it out of the B tier, so no, that's where it's going to be. Now, unfortunately, we are going to have to go down to the very bottom of the tier list, which had been empty at this point, but we're going to have to go there now with Dark Phoenix. Now, there's a lot of things surrounding like what was going on with Fox and like the future of the franchise and how much money some of these movies had been making and things getting cut that really kind of factor into all of it. But when I'm just sitting down and watching a movie, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about like what's going on the screen, and what's going on the screen is a big letdown. I don't think that the performances are as good, but I think a lot of that comes from probably the script, and then also the fact that this guy had never directed a movie before. People's accents are all over the place. You can tell that the whole third act is just completely different from what was originally planned. Originally they were going to go to space and everything, and it's the Skrulls were going to be in this, but then Captain Marvel came out first, or they found out the Skrulls were going to be in Captain Marvel because the rights for the Skrulls were all over the place, and so it's like, who gets to use them? It's just one of those things where it's like, I'm so glad we don't have to worry about that anymore. Like they can just make the movies that they want to make without having to worry about rights and all of that. And as much as like I wasn't the biggest fan of Jennifer Lawrence's Raven, I didn't want her to go out like this, man. And I'm totally was siding with her for like this whole movie. I don't like seeing Professor X like this, where he's just like an idiot. Like I'm fine with him being kind of like a jerk and everything, but like he's just being stupid in this movie, and not a fan. So yeah, at the time of its release, this was the worst X-Men movie in my opinion. But lucky for it, it didn't stay there for long. The last actual released by Fox X-Men movie, The New Mutants, is the worst. Now, again, even more so than the last one, they were like, this is it. We have been bought out. Things are bad. We just try to get this thing out there. And then you can tell. It's so like the cheap version. Like people say the CW version of something all the time, and it really is. It feels like they're shooting on like one set, and it's just a bunch of teenagers who are in this insane asylum. They're like, I don't like you because you're the new girl and you're weird and blah blah. And on top of it all, like Anya Taylor-Joy is almost unbearable as Magic in this movie. Like I cannot stand her. It's not like in the way where it's like, oh, I don't like her character because I'm not supposed to. It's just like whenever she's talking, it's just like, please stop. They do try to do some twists in here, which I guess kind of work. Like it changes the way you look at one of the characters. I mean, I guess I can spoil it. It changes the way you look at the Doctor. It's like, oh, she was bad. Like you thought like maybe she was being good, but no, she's bad from the beginning. I do like the Stranger Things guy being Cannonball. I think he's my favorite thing in the movie, and the only thing that I really kind of latched onto to be like, yeah, get me through this one, buddy. Luckily, this movie is short, so if you are watching all of the X-Men movies, you don't have to, go through this one for too long. And then that brings us to the final one of these, which is Deadpool and Wolverine. I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I don't want to fall into like recency bias and be like, it's fantastic, 5 out of 5, which is my general nature. And so because of that, I'm not going to go super high. It is going to go really high, but I'm going to put it at the bottom of A tier is where it's going to land. I really enjoyed the jokes. I thought it was very funny. All the cameos were good. They're paying off things that they didn't have to pay off. Seeing Channing Tatum get a big Gambit is fantastic. Blade showing up was so good. Henry Cavill being in there. I'm just listing cameos at this point. I don't need to do this. If you have seen the movie, then you know. If you haven't seen the movie, then this is not the way to find these things out. You should just go and watch the movie. Overall, I just really, really liked getting to see Hugh Jackman play Wolverine in this way. It's like a rounded normal kind of comic book Wolverine, where it's just like, okay, he's got a past, he's dealing with things, but it's not the one that we know. So we don't know everything that's going on with him. To be fair, I do think that he should have been more directly involved with like the deaths of the X-Men. Like I thought like he was going to be like get mind controlled and kill everybody like he does in Old Man Logan in the comics, but it didn't work out that way. And to be fair, he should feel bad for killing a bunch of just normal people who didn't do anything wrong too. That he should feel bad about that. But they're a great pairing, him and Ryan Reynolds, and you can tell they get along with each other, like in all the interviews and everything too. So it's fun to see them in the movie, like kind of getting to play these parts off of each other, and it's just like a joke a minute. And I think most of them land, and for me, that's something that I enjoy. Probably the best comedy I've seen all year. And so that's it. That is my X-Men movie ranking. Next week, I am going to be putting out another X-Men tier list. That one's going to be talking about all the different mutations that the X-Men have, just kind of ranking how much I would like to have those versus which ones I would rather, not have at all. And so that one should be a lot of fun to go through. There's like 99 different characters we're going to be talking about. It's going to be a long one. So if you're interested in seeing that, don't forget to subscribe and just let me know which one of these movies is your favorite down in the comments below, and which one I ranked in completely the wrong spot. I like hearing those takes as well. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, you take care. See you then.